Now, I don't like to draw on the canvas. I don't like to outline anything. What I prefer to do, let me get my rag here, and I always keep just a soft, lint-free rag. What I like to do, I look back at my composition and I'm just going to make points on this canvas, just points where some of my major components are going to be. And then I'm going to start with my darkest darks and I'm going to go and fill those in. Okay? So here I go. Here we go. All right. Now with my points, I'm just going to use another bit of that mixture of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. All right. I'm going to find what I want to be my horizon line. So I'm going to come up a little, a little higher than mid canvas, and I'm just going to mark that. Okay. I'm going to put a little point where I probably want my little pathway to go in here. It's going to start through there. And I'm going to keep this little composition finder handy because I'm going to go back and forth. I've got it on the 8x10 and I'm just going to keep looking through that and deciding how I want my composition. Okay? All right. So I know I'm going to have some mountains in here, so I'll make a little point where those mountains are going to be. I know this, it looks like nothing, but this is just kind of for my own benefit for when I start filling in these colors. Okay? Okay, so those are really all the points that I need to kind of keep me on balance as far as where I'm going with this painting. Okay. So now I'm going to start with my darkest darks. I'm going to start filling in those darkest darks. Now it's really important when you're doing plein air painting to put your darks down first. It's just not possible to come in with a really dark if you've already put your lights on there. So darks always go in first, okay? And you can always go back and highlight. Always go back and do darker darks and lighter lights. But just as a rule, let's get those darks in first. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the local color. I'm looking at those rhododendron in there. Now, if you notice, I don't use a tube green. I don't like to do that. I think for my intents and purposes, I would rather mix my greens than to come in with that, with the tubes. I just think that it works better. Okay, so I've got a pretty dark, so I'm going to fill in. And this is basically just blocking in at this point. Everything's going to change. We're just blocking in, okay? Darkest darks. You can see I did not put enough of that blue out, so I'm probably going to go back and put some more of that. Okay. And that's an issue with plein air painting. You're always trying to judge how much paint to put out. You don't want to waste it. I always need more than I think. Okay. So here we are. Use a little bit of that Galkyd, put down there. Okay, so this rhododendron, this line of rhododendron, is what I'm going for right in here. I know I'm going to have some darker areas in here. Notice I'm leaving my road. At this point, you can hear me scrubbing the paint because I'm covering canvas at this point. With plein air painting, you want to go fast. It's a very flat light today, but normally you're just trying to get that light on that canvas, get in your mind where your lightest lights are. You're trying to get it on that canvas before it changes. And I will say it changes within half an hour. So you just have to go fast. So we're going to go as if that is the case here. Okay, then I know I've got some darker darks over on this side, so we're going to fill in over here. Remember, no details yet. We're just covering the canvas. Okay. Your colors aren't, or my colors aren't exact. They're not what they're going to end up being quite yet. But I'm just looking at that rhododendron, trying to get some darks in there. Use a little bit of that earth color. And the main thing, it's just got to be fun. You can't be concerned about the painting itself. Plein air painting is such that it's an experience. If you're worried about coming out with a masterpiece every time you go, you're going to take all the fun out of it. So whether you come out with a great painting or you've just spent a day outdoors and you wipe it off at the end of the day, you're going to learn something from it. And that's what I love about plein air painting. It gets you out. I always learn something. I don't always come out with a masterpiece, but it's always fun and it's always a good experience. Okay. All right, I think I'm happy with my darks in there for now. Okay, now you can hear this little box clicking. That's because it's not quite as tight as it probably should be on this tripod, but that's okay. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to move to, I've pretty much got in the darker areas that I want to have in there. I'm going to move on and do, actually I think I'll start with the sky and come forward. Once I get my darks in, there are numerous ways to go about it, but just think dark to light. So usually when I get my darks in, I like to go ahead and start with the sky and come forward, okay? There again, I'm still blocking in. This is a very flat grayish sky today. So I'm going, it's not going to be quite as bright. And I'm just going to put in some sky. I'm going to move all across the top of the canvas. Now I will have trees going in over this sky, but for right now, I'm just going to fill in some of these areas. Okay. Now I mentioned that there are some challenges with this setup, and part of that is that the canvas is set back into the top of this box, which is great for transporting materials and transporting canvas, but it can be a little bit challenging when you're painting up in those far corners. Okay, I want to stop. I want to take another look. Just remember, you're just always looking to see what that composition. See how you're going with your composition. Okay. So now I've got my sky pretty well in there. So I'm going to come down from that. The next thing I'm going to block in is going to be that mountain. Okay. So what I've used for the sky, I've used my white and a little bit of both of those blues. I've toned it down somewhat with just a little bit of the yellow. I'm going to put some more of this Galkyd Lite out. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll add a little bit more blue. I want to keep that mountain fairly light back there. So I'm just going to bring some of that. Let's bring it down here. Going to tone it down with a little bit of the red. Add a little more of that white to it. Remember, these are not your final colors. You're just going for that ballpark. And we're looking at values. You know, we're looking at values too. So that's what this is a little bit darker value than that sky, but not a whole lot. Okay. So we're just going to get that blocked in. Put a little bit of that earth color in there for that mountain too. Okay. I'm going to go a little bit grayer down at the bottom where I can see the top of the rhododendron, and then between the rhododendron and the mountain we've got bare trees. So I'm going to go a little bit darker back up in there. And you notice I'm still leaving my pathway because that would be the lightest light. Okay. Okay, and remember, it's just supposed to be fun. You're just trying to learn, you're trying to pay attention to the colors that you're seeing. And what I find is that it is so helpful. Once I started painting and I was doing mainly studio, working from photographs mostly. And what I find with plein air painting, even though, like I say, I am not successful every time I go out, I do feel like it strengthens my studio work. Because if you're outdoors, you're looking at all those details, you're looking at really what those colors look like. You'll find that if you're using mainly photographs, photographs will flatten out the darks. They'll look just as flat as they can be. And we know that's not how it is in real life. Okay. So I'm still coming in here with, okay, spread that color around. Okay, I'm just covering canvas at this point. I might work on that mountain a little bit. Rinse my brush out. I find that even though I bring 4 or 5 brushes with me, I tend to use one. When I get into more of the detail work, I'll switch back, but it's just a bad habit. Okay, go back to some of that green. It's a little bit cooler. Add some of that red to tone that green down. Got some dark back in there. Okay, and as you can see, we're getting our canvas covered for the most part. Bring back some of this in here. And I'm going to go back to a little bit of dark along this path. I'll add some highlights into that when we get a little further along. Now the light today is very cool, overcast light. So we're going to pay attention to our warms. I want to throw a little bit of warm in there. You see those leaves along the edge of that path. Those warm browns. Okay, always step back and just take a look, see how it's coming. I can tell right away that I want to lower that pathway. Okay, so I'm going to take another look. Put it on my 8x10. Take a look here. Check my viewfinder. This is how I want it. Yep. So I'm going to lower that pathway, bring some of those rhodos up a little bit higher. Okay, this is where I'm going to go over that light a little bit, and that's going to be challenging. Let's lower it down in here some. A little bit of that Galkyd to make it flow. Okay. I'm going to sharpen that curve just a smidgen. Okay. Okay, so even though we have a very overcast day, as I've mentioned, we're not going to be a slave to this scene. I think what we want to do when we come in with this path, I'm going to put some lights back in there, even though you're really not seeing them on that path. Maybe put some lights up here where this rhodos are. Okay. I'm going to come up a little higher with that. With these in-between trees. And I'm using a lot of just grayed down colors today. Lots of grayed down colors. It's not one of those brilliant blue sky days that we have here in Boone in the summertime. Okay. Bring that sky down a little bit. Okay. And just remember, lighter, cooler, further back. If you keep that in mind when you're doing your paintings. Spread around some of that blue. We want to brighten it up a little bit. You don't want it to look quite as gloomy. And that mountain is covered in fog, so we're just gonna, okay. So we've got that mountain back there. Now from here, go ahead and just get some of that pathway in. You notice that I've left the pathway till the very end because it's going to be the lightest component in our composition. Okay. Okay, I'm going to warm that path up a little bit. It's gravel. Keep that in mind while we're doing it, but let's just come in here. I think I might even pretend that there's some sun out today. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of that in here. I'm not going to probably bring some lights in. And then I'll come in with some darker darks, but I do want that path to have a few highlights in it. So you'll see, I'm going to try not to, okay, it's going to disappear behind here. And at any point, you can wipe back, change, you know, if you get your composition, or if you get it blocked in, and you look and you're not happy with it, wipe it back. No worries. Okay, so I'm just going to try to, we're still blocking in colors. Notice I'm just going to try to get it covered. All right. As that path goes around there. So I've started out with my darkest darks. Once I got those in, I've gone back, I've started with the sky, I've moved forward. I'm almost to the point where I have the whole canvas covered. Okay, nothing is exact. You don't want exact. We're not going for exact. We're having fun. And we're learning. Okay, you can still hear me scrubbing that paint on. Okay, so we've got the whole canvas covered with our first layer of paint. Okay, so let's, stand back, take a look at that. Think about how I'm going to go about adding those details in our next step.